So Elmer Keith is known for quite a lot of things. The 357 Magnum, the 44 Magnum, and some really hot loaded 44 Special and even 45 Colt. But before he was doing any kind of loading with smokeless powder, he was using black powder, like a lot of the people were at that time, because that's what was available. And also it's what was required for the guns that they had at the time. But I was reading my copy of Six Guns and I came across something. Let me read it to you. So after I decided to do something about pointed bullets, I got a 4590 Winchester 300 grain mold and cast a few pounds of slugs with it, sized them down to 454 and loaded them with 35 grains of 2F black powder. This was a real killing load, and trapped coyotes and bobcats and some small game soon proved its superiority in killing power over the pointed factory bullets. Let's give that a try. Now, I don't have any 300 grain projectiles for 4.52, but I do have some of these 4570s that will size down using this Lee sizing kit. Now this thing's pretty straightforward. You thread this thing in there like that. Put this in here like that. Take a couple of your rounds here and just push them on up like that. Now I know that they'll tell you that you need to use that liquid A-lock stuff, and that would probably help, but as you can see, it sizes them down just fine. And of course, anytime we do any black powder cartridge, we always melt the smokeless lube off and re-lube them with homemade black powder lube of lamb's tallow and beeswax. So let's just check these real quick. .452. So here's our 300 grain projectile sized to 4.52 with all of the smokeless lube melted off. Now, typically, if I'm going to do 50 or 100 rounds, I will pan lube these. But if I'm just doing 12 or 18 just for tests, I can typically just grab some of my lube and just lube it like that. Take a paper towel, wipe off the bottom, and there you have it. Now here I'm going to part ways with Elmer. He says 2F, but I'm going to run 3. And now I have weighed out 35 grains, I hope you can see it exactly, of 3F Swiss. Okay, 35 grains of 3F Swiss with a 300 grain lead flat point. Again, I always make sure there's no lube on the bottom of that.
Daddy.
Yeah, honey. All right, so there you have it. All of these are Starline cases, my favorite. So I have the cylinder out of my walker here, and we'll just make sure that they fit in there. Oh yeah, quite nice. Now we're going to be using 3 different firearms for this test. The first, we're going to use the Ruger Bisley with a 4 5/8 barrel. The second, we're going to use the Uberti 3rd Model Dragoon with a 7.5-inch barrel. And then third, we're going to use the 1894 Marlin with a 24-inch barrel. And this will give us a good idea of velocity changes with barrel lengths. So 35 grains of 3F Swiss with a 300 grain lead flat point. 886. 875. 870. 880. 885. 847. So these rounds through the Bisley had an average velocity of 873 feet per second with a max spread of 39, and the bullet hits with 508 foot-pounds of energy, which for a stubby barrel like that is pretty darn good.
35 grains of 3F Swiss with a 300 grain lead flat point. .933. .920. .893. .897. .893. .889.
Now the Dragoon had an average of 904 feet per second with a max spread of 44, which is a slight increase over the 4 5/8 inch Bisley, but not by a whole lot, only about 30 feet per second.
Okay, so 35 grains of 3F Swiss and a 300 grain lead flat point. 1200. 1196. 1205. 1220. Duplicate 1220. That's it. Let me put one more through there just to get another number on it. 1232. Wow.
Now the Marlin averaged 1,212 feet per second with a max spread of 36, and that bullet hit with 978 foot-pounds of energy, which is really moving for a 300 grain projectile. And here's the breakdown between the three of them. So we can see that we gain about 30 feet per second between the Bisley and the Dragoon on average, which doesn't gain us much in the way of energy. But the difference between the Dragoon and the Marlin is huge by gaining 300 feet per second and almost doubling the energy.
So as you can see, those rounds performed great through all of those firearms. One thing I think that this shows pretty good is the shorter barrel isn't going to cost you that much velocity. The difference between the Dragoon with a 7.5 inch barrel and the Bisley with a 4 5/8 barrel was 30 feet per second. I hear it all the time. People say, oh, with 40 grains of powder, you're going to just blow it out the barrel. You're not going to propel the bullet any faster.
Bullshit.
Now, after I had loaded those and tested them, I continued reading and I came across this right here. Finally, a weak .45 Colt case head blew off of this load. The gas blew the loading gate off the gun, breaking its shank and cutting through the flesh of my trigger finger. From this experience, I decided that the bullet was a bit too heavy for the thin cases and the thin chamber wall of the cylinder. And then he talks about going to a 260 grain bullet. Now, I think the biggest reason why that happened was back then they were using balloon head cases and they were known for being weak, and them separating was a thing that did happen. And there are several documented circumstances like this, where that did happen. We don't know how many times he had reloaded that particular case. The other thing is he's using a black powder firearm. He's using an 1880s Colt single action Army. I'm using modern firearms, and well, not all, but most of the brass and all the ones that I use for this test are all Starline cases. Starline cases are the absolute best in my not so humble opinion. In fact, 45 Colt Starline cases are made to hold higher pressures than you will see in a 44 mag. So I really don't have any danger. I don't think there's any danger of overloading a black powder cartridge enough to break a case in half and cause some catastrophic failure, like he mentions here. Now again, those are my opinions. Yours may differ. These are great loads, and I'm definitely going to pursue this further. And I was really happy with how they performed in the Marlin in particular, because man, 1,200 feet per second with a 300 grain bullet is moving. I don't care if that's smokeless or black powder. And in fact, this is really one of the things that I like about black powder 45 Colt is oftentimes you'll get way better velocities with black powder than you will with any smokeless load that's not a plus P or a Ruger only load. In fact, my standard smokeless load for 45 Colt is 6 grains of Trail Boss and a 250 grain bullet. And in my Bisley, they clock right at 710 average. And that's the max load. So with 35 grains of black powder and a 300 grain bullet, we're getting 870s. So, and that's with a 300 grain bullet. It's even faster and even more impressive. Well, faster anyway, with a 250 grain bullet and 40 grains of powder. So we're definitely going to pursue this further. Maybe we'll see if we can't get us a critter with them. So as usual, folks, if you thought this video didn't suck, do me a favor and hit the like button, consider subscribing. And if you did think it sucked, well, then go make your own damn video.